Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and this evening we're going to talk about the election results. And to help us understand what's going on and what the implications are, I have Stuart Gardner as an expert in all sorts of good stuff.
I like to consider myself an expert. Thank you, George.
Yeah. So, I think one of the better descriptions that I got of what the election is Ray Dalio wrote one, says, now that the nightmare scenario of a close Trump loss and ensuing fight over the election has been taken off the table by a decisive Trump-led rightist sweep over the Harris leftist alternative, and a number of key appointments have been announced, the picture of what's likely to happen is emerging. So what do you think happened and why?
I think the good people of the United States have traded reason for madness.
Okay.
I think, obviously, Trump's a TV personality. He knows how to communicate to the masses a lot better. I mean, Democrats, there's a lot of things going on. Democrats are lost in the wilderness. But, President-elect Trump, he's a brilliant communicator. He speaks to the audience at their level, whether it be, wealthy business people or the average person on the street. They own the culture wars. I mean, the stuff with, we don't have to go too into it, but with transgender kids and the stuff with different types of people's rights is just such a hot button issue. And, there's a lot of people that don't like what they see. I mean, the Republicans have been brilliant on making people in Texas care what's going on in New Hampshire.
So where do you think this is going to go?
That's a really good question. I take the guy at his word, and what my fear is he doesn't lead through. He's not a guy to bring people together. He's a divisive character. He uses fear and intimidation as a managerial style, and to me, that is the recipe for danger. I mean, you have on your list immigration. Everybody wants proper immigration. You've got somewhere between 8 and 12 million illegal, non-documented people in the United States. Yeah. You're going to put them in camps, George? Like, think about the logistics of this, right? You're going to have a mom and a daughter that's legal and a dad and a son that's not. And they all have jobs, or two of them have jobs, and they're contributing to the economy. They work in a restaurant. They work in the back of a kitchen. They work somewhere. Are you going to separate the families? Are you going to send these people to Guatemala or to Mexico or to Brazil that have never been there? And what happens when they come back? Do we arrest them again? It's just, if he does move forward with we're kicking everybody out, I think it's going to be a disaster. You're going to shoot people in the street if they run? I mean, think about the logistics of this.
Yeah.
Let me say one more thing, and then I want your point. Like, this could have been done. It could have been done with some wisdom. Like, I want a thoughtful leader. Trump could have said, look, we got all these people that are undocumented. Everyone's really mad about them. What we're going to do is we're going to create this division, and it's going to get paid for by them. So you would not one penny to the U.S. taxpayer. And all of a sudden now, the money that these guys earn, these undocumented people, go right to this division, and we pay them. And they have to report to us every day where they are. They have to report to us their status for criminals, all this kind of stuff. And they're not going to be able to vote, and they're not going to. They still have to run through the system if they want to be citizens. They're just guest workers or something. That could have worked, and we could have kicked out criminals, and this could have been done so much better. Please.
Yeah. Well, I think you've touched on one of the important issues is nobody thought about the logistics.
Yeah.
And it was always well and good to say, okay, we're a sanctuary city, and we're going to not help ICE find these people and deport them. And then all of a sudden, the southern governors said, wait a minute, this is too much for us. We got to send these people north, get them out of our neighborhood. And some of them were pretty cute. I think the governor of Florida flying them into Martha's Vineyard. They're still there. What are you going to do with them, Yeah. And the governor of Massachusetts is having one heck of a time trying to find out where we're going to put them, what are we going to do with them when we got them. And Chicago is notorious for their difficulties. So just about all the big cities all of a sudden have had their basic problems aggravated by this influx that they can't handle.
You started the show by saying, where do we go from here? And, like, you could tell me all the policies that Trump or the right supports, and I'd probably agree with you. You know me, I'm a left-of-center guy, but I'm reasonable. What I don't like is the guy at the top. It's not, you need science, you need facts, you need logistics, you need a reasonable plan, and then you can move forward. You just don't, I mean, it's fun to be Hollywood and guns a-blazing, you know, it's exciting, it's professional wrestling. It doesn't work. You're going to shoot people in the streets. I hate the idea of being a sanctuary city in the sense that everyone's going to come here. What are we going to, we spent something, Massachusetts spent $1 billion on undocumented people. I mean, that money should go to veterans or homeless Massachusetts citizens or something. I don't mean to be unkind or unsympathetic to the plight of immigrants. My father was an immigrant. My grandparents were immigrants, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But to spend that much money when there's other needs, I just think is irresponsible.
Well, I think the Boston situation with Mass and Cass, where you had these homeless people just piling up in that area, and the drug problems got to be horrendous, and everybody wrung their hands about it for years, and then all of a sudden the immigrants show up, and oh yeah, we got to put them in these hotels, we got to make space for them in the Logan, and like you said, it's a logistics problem that nobody thought out. And I think this is one of the basic issues that the next administration is inheriting is people have a lot of good ideas up until the point of how are we going to do that? And that's where the whole game falls apart.
Georgia, I'm scared because are you going to, again, you're going to shoot people on the street if they run. You're going to separate 10-year-olds from their parents. Just none of it makes any sense. And I get the point. I get it. But there's got to be a better way. And again, I question the wisdom at the top. I know Trump's got a huge following, and I know, he's a guy that people like to hear him talk, and they like what he has to say. But I think he doesn't do the homework.
No,
that's my opinion.
Well, unfortunately, the way the media covers these stories, an in-depth discussion about the issues doesn't play. But he did it the first time he ran, and the second time he ran is he would get on Facebook or Twitter or some social media and make an outrageous statement, and the mainstream media would pick up on it, and they'd report it, and they would spell his name right, which is the old axiom, say anything you want about me, but spell my name.
My name right, exactly.
And he got a lot of recognition out of it, and that's part of, I think, his strategy.
He's a brilliant communicator.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yeah, and so it worked. Now he's into a situation where he was president once, he knows what the game is about, and he knows what the problems were. And he's inherited a whole set of problems that I think were aggravated by the previous administrations going back to Obama, and Biden didn't help much. Putin is acting up. He's threatening all sorts of nasty things because of Biden's latest little venture of, okay, Ukraine, you can take those long-range missiles and fire them into Russia. We don't care. And Putin is threatening to go nuclear. So a lot of the problems that we're having have been aggravated.
I agree. I'm very concerned about both what's going on in Israel, what's going on between NATO and Russia. My fear is that, again, President-elect Trump does not approach this problem with the wisdom of forethought. He has a quote, and I can pull it up if you want me to, where he said he would encourage Russia to do whatever they wanted if NATO countries don't pay their fair share.
Yeah.
Now, the idea of NATO countries paying their fair share is a good idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. But to say Russia do what you want if you don't pay your fair share is treason. It's treasonous. If Russia attacks England. Are you not going to defend England if their credit card bill is still due? I mean, I know millions of people in the United States that would go to England to defend England. That's a ridiculous statement that's not helpful.
Yeah, and that's true. But again, when we get back to the basic principle that a majority of the problem is that NATO countries have not been maintaining their military. So
I look at the problem as Russian aggression more than...
Oh, yeah. Russian is the big bully in the
Yeah.
area. And you can make an argument that said, well, the United States didn't help because we encouraged NATO to expand east
Yep.
right up to the Russian border.
Which was maybe a mistake.
Yeah. So that's not the smoothest move in international politics.
Yep.
But at the same time, when Putin took over Crimea, Obama did nothing about it.
Yeah,
And
Another
so
big
that
mistake.
is sort of like, okay, we look the other way. And he moved into the Ukraine.
yeah.
And for the longest time, nobody did anything about it until I think they got the message that, hey, Putin is serious. He's going to come marching west. And all of a sudden, NATO said, oh, well, here we go again. Now they decided to get interested. But they don't have the wherewithal. They never built up their...
I mean...
So you get to these situations with, what can the President of the United States do to get the help that he needs where it...
I don't know, but I think temperance is wise. Again, I mean, let's talk about the first two world wars that was started right where they're fighting now.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't start the first two world wars, and it wasn't Brazil that started the first wars. So I think there's a trepidation amongst those that understand history that, this is where the match can be lit again.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in love with Biden's policy. I mean, it hasn't really escalated until now, and I think the reason why it's escalated now is because Trump is coming in, and Biden wants to he doesn't feel that he feels that Trump is more amicable to Russia than he is to NATO. And I've heard okay, well, why are we having those arguments? I mean, Russia's a dictatorship. We support democracies. Either we're going to say, look, we want a world where people can choose and people can be free and people can say what they want, or we're going to choose a world that if you open your mouth, if you throw a pride flag up in Russia, you go to jail. That's just wrong, George.
Yeah.
You know that, and I know that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the other half of the problem, that China is now the instigator in most of this stuff, that they are slowly getting all the unaligned countries lined up against us.
Yeah.
And, they've got economic problems. Their Belt and Road process is running out of monies, and they aren't living up to their promises. But they've got half of the Middle East and Southern Asia already in debt to them.
Here's the thing about China and Russia, which my friends that are on the right talking about the BRIC nations and about the U.S. currency not being the top currency anymore. Gravity exists, whether you like it or not. There is the reason why U.S. currency is the top of the world is because the information that comes out of U.S. financial markets is basically true, right? We have a free press. And if Google's going under, or if Amazon's president is in trouble, or something's happening, it gets reported so they can understand the real currency value, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in China. It doesn't happen in Russia. That's why those countries will never have the top currency. That's why I'm not worried about our debt, because our debt is to China. Because no one's ever going to trust that the information coming out of China, they will for a week or two, and then they'll realize, oh, they lied, all the factories are shut down, all the workers are revolting, and the yen goes to zero.
Yeah.
Or the yuan?
One.
I don't know what it is.
Renminbi.
Whatever it is. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it goes to zero. And I think that, Wall Street's going to know that. I don't know, George. I don't know what the answers are. In my opinion, I like the ideas. I don't like him at the top.
Well, part of the problem is that what he's inherited is a tremendous dependence upon China.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the whole concern with Taiwan. If China takes over Taiwan, TSMC...
The semiconductors, yeah.
Yeah. They now are no longer the dependable source that we need for chips. And as a result, what do? You know, all the electric cars don't work anymore.
How do you compete with countries that give literally no rights to their workers and pay them basically a subsistence wage? We've decided in the United States, which I agree with, that workers have to make a minimum standard. They have to have health insurance. They have to have a certain standard of living, and I get it. It's it's probably a really nice standard of living. And poor, being poor sucks, but they should be. It's not like being poor in China or being poor in wherever. But I don't know how, other than American ingenuity, which I think Biden was trying to do with the chips plants and the stuff in Ohio and Indiana and making that. Other than that, I don't know how to do it, because you can't compete with $2 an hour wages.
Well, that's what the tariffs are all about. And
Not in love with those either.
no, but it's a double-edged sword. That the tariffs are going to drive up the cost of stuff in Walmart, but at the same time, maybe if the tariffs get driven up enough, that an American company can now really compete. And I think this is a case where we're having problems with oil, in that we depended so much on Saudi Arabia that when they decided they want more money and they raised the price of oil, we just had to pay for it at the gas pumps. And one of the things that came out of it is they drove up the price of oil to the point where it was economic to invest in fracking. And all of a sudden, fracking got to be the way of doing business, and all sorts of good stuff came out of that. And the net result is we are now an exporter of gas and oil, because we can produce it a lot cheaper than the rest of the world.
I have another problem with Trump's policies. We should be promoting, and I know he's not going to be a big fan, although Elon Musk, of electrifying the grid, nuclear power. We cannot live off of the black goo that comes out of the ground. You know it, and I know it. Georgia, just think in Beverly. Now, it rained yesterday. It hasn't rained out. I grew up in Newton and Brookline, but I've been all around the country. But basically, I've spent most of my life in Massachusetts. I've never seen 75 days without rain. I've never seen wildfires. I mean, the environment is changing, and it's changing because our way of life uses more than we give back to the planet, right? We take more and we throw trash. I mean, I read an article the other day that says we have credit card-sized plastic, all of us, in our bodies, because there's so much plastic around. These are real problems that are, again, my gravity thing with the currency. It's not going to go away because you say drill, baby, drill, right? And he's got everyone believing that we're going to drill our way out of this. That's not the answer. The answer is more high efficiency stuff. The answer is either electric cars or cars that aren't running off of oil. We've got to stop giving money to regimes that we don't like, Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Iran. I mean, Iran and Russia. Russia is fueling its aggression with oil that it's selling to China, which it's not supposed to be doing.
And again, the point you're making is that we need to have a more efficient electric system and a grid that will support it, and that means nukes. And you missed the show. That was 2 weeks ago.
Damn it.
But one of the problems that we have is you look at France, and they are 75% nuclear power for their electric system.
Yes, I know that.
And it's a government-run system. Their price of producing a new plant has not changed significantly in the last 30, 40 years. It's still around 1,000 euros per kilowatt.
The thick concrete that they got to pour there.
It's about the same. At the same time, the price of producing a nuclear power plant in the United States has gone through the roof. It's around $9,000 a kilowatt. And a lot of that has to do with all these procedures and
regulations.
And again, this is part of the Supreme Court coming down recently and saying that, wait a minute, all you regulatory agencies, you just can't make this stuff up just because you think it's nice. You don't make laws. Congress has got to make laws. And they're pushing back. This forces Congress to get into the game and not just keep ignoring the real problems.
I agree and I disagree. Again, I question the wisdom of the guy at the top. Is he going to be promoting this? And,
Well, that's where Elon Musk and
Yeah.
Vita Remeth, whatever his name
oh
is.
yeah, the
Indian guy.
Indian kid.
Yeah.
And you talked about the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court is again lost in the wood list as well. They're saying what the Supreme Court is saying in all these rulings is, if it's not in the Constitution, Congress has to make a law.
Yeah.
Right? That's a Pollyannish argument. The right to travel is not in the Constitution. The right to breathe is in the Constitution. The right to vote is not in the Constitution. The right to get married is not in the Constitution. The right to have relations with your spouse is not in the Constitution. Do I need Congress to make a law so I can have relations with my wife? It's absurd, George. And what they've done, there's a quote, I can't remember which Supreme Court justice said the Constitution is not a suicide pact. And what they've decided is, it's a suicide pact. And we're gonna say, if Congress doesn't do it, we're out. We're just gonna do the letter of our law. And I think it's again, I question the wisdom at the top.
Well, I think part of the problem that Trump is fighting is that he's inheriting what they call the swamp.
Yeah.
That the country is really run by all these agencies that have created their own power structure. It's not what Congress ever done. And you go back to the Constitution, it was carefully constructed, I think, that you've got three branches that check on each other. And as far as I can tell, Congress has dropped the ball.
I agree with that too.
So I think, I don't know how the guy at the top can sort out Congress, but that's where I think a big part of the problem is.
You say it's federal agencies, so I interrupt. I think it's more big corporations, and I think Trump is again. I question the wisdom at the top. He's the exact wrong guy. He's Mr. Big Corporation. Other than Google, he loves all the big companies. If anyone that shows him attention, he loves them. He's not the guy to come in and clean up. So, by the way, what do they say? They all go to drain the swamp, and they find out it's not a swamp; it's a hot tub.
I like that. That's a good one, yeah. But, yeah, that's part of the way the game is played. And we went through this thing with the pandemic, that all of a sudden, well, you got to have these medications, you got to use this, and you got to do everything else. And after it's all over, well, by the way, it really wasn't that important. And the 6 feet of separation, well, that was sort of made up. And not using Infocin because it's a horse, what do they call it? Horse dewormer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of this stuff that came out of the government at the time turned out to be totally wrong.
Yeah. I'm disappointed with the way COVID was handled.
So I think there is an argument to say that, hey, maybe Elon Musk and Vita will straighten out the system somewhat.
You got more faith than I do, my brother.
Gotta try.
I was disappointed with COVID because they shut down the world and they said everyone's going to do these vaccines. If you don't do vaccines, you're kind of ostracized. We're going to fire you, whatever. And in a sense, I kind of don't have a problem with that in the sense that if it's a disease and we all got to kind of be it's a novel virus, all this kind of stuff. But I like criteria. In other words, if the people that are dying have 6 or 7 comorbidities and they're, forgive me, all over 85 years old or something like that, I don't know if it's the right answer to say that everyone has to, sequester themselves and do shots. Maybe the people that are over 85 have to sequester themselves.
Yeah.
I don't understand where 30 cents on every dollar that we earn goes to the federal government. And this is where I'll agree with the Republicans. Where does the money go? I thought they studied this stuff. I thought they had a plan in place. And obviously they didn't. It goes to maybe your agencies that you talk about.
Yeah. Well, they did have a plan. One time they got this committee together to look at the government. They came up with a whole bunch of bright ideas, and it died. Nothing ever came of it. And, it's one thing to have a study committee and come up do all this research work. And it was a pretty high-powered committee. It was a bunch of ex-congressmen, ex-senators.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bunch of hacks that brought in from the boondocks or anything. But at the
like
same
this
time,
show.
Yeah. And we're going to solve the problems of the world, I know. And next week, we're going to take on what? Yeah, but
Aliens in the ocean. Yeah.
yeah, but again, that's part of the issue involved of government agencies making things up. And it's not just at the national level. Beverly got stung with it because of when they tried to dredge the Bass River. They were
Yeah.
all set to go, had the barge here with the equipment on board, ready to do it, and the Corps of Engineers decided, oh, you can't dump that stuff in the ocean. You know, there is an example of, well, how did we get this far along?
No. I still don't go, how is there not a bridge there, over that bridge that's out on, what is it, River Street?
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I agree, there should be, the bridge goes out, fine. There should be a Navy, Army temp bridge, right? One lane at a time if it has to be, right? And then the planning, and it should be rebuilt within a year or within 18 months. But you can't shut down a road and a bridge. It's embarrassing that we're the richest nation in the world and we can't put a temporary bridge up.
Well, okay, if you start to think about this thing, what you're talking about is a Bailey Bridge.
The trucks with the bridge thing.
No, it's a bridge that comes with like an erector set.
That's what you need.
And the heaviest piece on it can be picked up by 8 guys and walked into place.
Why can't we do it?
I know. I was one of the 8 guys one time.
Back in the 1940s.
Not quite that far back, but yeah. Back in almost the Dark Ages, yeah. But I know it can be done. And yet, we've got National Guard units all over the state. There's got to be a combat engineer battalion in some one of these units that could have put that thing overnight.
Yeah, that's what should have happened. It's
And
embarrassing.
The other half of the thing that was missing is they were doing inspections on those bridges every year, and they should have seen well in advance
it's
that
coming,
this
they
bridge
know.
is going to go.
The other one's old. The one that goes over Kernwood?
Yeah.
That thing's about 250 years old.
Yeah, and you can see it's going to. There's no
Buckles and they're going to shut that one down too.
Yes.
I want to real briefly. I know we're running out of time. What are we going to do? Like if Trump comes in and does what he says, get rid of the undocumented people, and get rid of all these agencies. You're going to have millions of people unemployed that aren't going to want to work in kitchens. We're going to have people sitting around doing nothing. It's going to be chaos, George. It's going to be chaos. I question the wisdom at the top.
So when do you want to come back and thrash at that one?
Anytime. I just want to say, before you end, the difference between brilliance and stupidity is brilliance has its limits.
Yeah.
Please.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And my email address is at the front of the show and at the trail end. And if you got a comment, please send it to me. And if you've got a longer statement to make, there's room for you here at the table. And thanks again for watching, and we'll definitely do some more.
Take care.